The candle in Alina's room burned low as her father's voice echoed through the door, cold and final. Her hands trembled around the letter that sealed her fate. In 3 days, she would marry Duke Alaric Sterling, a man old enough to be her grandfather, a man whose name alone made servants lower their eyes. Alina had heard the stories whispered in the village, tales of a duke who lived alone in a stone mansion, who had buried 2 wives and spoke to no one unless business demanded it. She pressed her palm against the door and listened as her father argued with her mother, their voices tight with desperation. The family's debts had grown too large to escape. Land, horses, even the roof over their heads belonged to men who wanted payment now, not promises. Alina understood, even as her chest ached with each breath. She was the only card left to play. That night, she did not scream or beg. She simply sat by her window and let the tears fall in silence, watching the moonlight stretch thin across the fields she loved and would soon leave behind. She thought of the future she had imagined once, a quiet cottage, a husband who laughed easily, children running through a garden. All of it dissolved like smoke the moment her father signed the contract. The next morning, a carriage arrived bearing the Duke's crest, a black hawk with wings spread wide. Alina watched from the window as a steward stepped out, carrying a box wrapped in deep violet cloth. Her mother rushed to greet him, her voice unnaturally bright, while Alina remained frozen at the top of the stairs. The steward explained that the Duke wished to send a token of goodwill before the wedding, a gesture of respect for his future bride. Alina's father accepted the box eagerly, his eyes gleaming with relief rather than curiosity about its contents. When the steward left, Alina's mother called her down, urging her to open it. Alina's fingers were unsteady as she lifted the lid, half expecting jewelry meant to soften a bitter deal. Inside, she found not gold or gems but a single, folded letter written in a firm, elegant hand. She unfolded it slowly, her breath catching as she read the first line. The Duke had written that he understood the marriage was not her choice, and that he intended to treat her with fairness and respect, regardless of what either of them felt. Alina read the words twice, then 3 times, searching for cruelty hidden beneath politeness but found none. Her mother, impatient, asked what it said, and Alina folded the letter against her chest, unwilling to share it yet. For the first time since the engagement began, a small, unfamiliar feeling stirred beneath her sorrow, something she could not yet name. It was not hope, not exactly, but it was not despair either. She walked back to her room that evening carrying the letter with her, reading it once more by candlelight before sleep finally took her, the storm inside her chest quieter than it had been in days, though far from calm. The morning of the wedding arrived with a sky the color of pale ash, matching the heaviness in Alina's heart. Servants dressed her in white silk, weaving pearls through her hair while she stared blankly at her reflection, hardly recognizing the woman staring back. Guests filled the chapel, whispering behind gloved hands about the strange match between a young woman and a duke old enough to be her grandfather. Alina walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes fixed on the stone floor, refusing to meet the curious stare surrounding her. When she finally lifted her gaze, she found Duke Alaric waiting at the altar, taller than she expected, his silver hair neatly combed, his face lined with age but not unkind. His eyes, a deep and steady gray, held none of the coldness she had braced herself for. As the priest spoke the sacred words, Alina's voice remained steady, though her hands shook slightly at her sides. Alaric's voice, when he spoke his vows, was low and calm, carrying a quiet sincerity that surprised her. After the ceremony, a grand feast filled the estate hall, though Alina barely tasted the food placed before her. Guests offered polite congratulations, though their eyes lingered with pity or curiosity, unable to hide their disbelief at the pairing. Alina caught fragments of conversation, some guests murmuring that the Duke had chosen her out of loneliness, others suggesting darker reasons tied to his family's past. She pushed the whispers aside, focusing instead on the steady presence of the man now bound to her by law. As evening approached, the guests began to leave, their laughter fading into the cool night air. Lena's chest tightened as a maid led her toward the private wing of the estate, her heart pounding with dread born from years of frightening stories about the Duke's isolated life. She remembered the letter he had sent before the wedding, the calm promise of fairness, and clung to it as her only comfort. When she reached the chamber door, she paused, gathering the courage to step inside, unsure what awaited her beyond it. The room was quiet, lit softly by candlelight, the air carrying the faint scent of cedar and rain. Alaric stood near the window, his back to her, gazing out at the darkened gardens below. When he turned to face her, his expression was calm, almost gentle, nothing like the intimidating figure the villagers described. Alina remained near the door, unsure whether to speak first, her heart still racing from the day's events. Alaric studied her for a long moment before speaking, his voice soft, carrying none of the authority he commanded in public. He told her she had nothing to fear from him tonight, that he understood the weight of the choice made on her behalf. Alina's throat tightened, unable to respond immediately, caught between relief and disbelief at the sincerity in his tone. For the first time since the engagement began, she allowed herself to breathe fully, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly, though uncertainty still lingered beneath the surface. Alaric gestured toward a small table near the fireplace, where a single wooden box rested beside 2 cups of warm tea. Alina approached carefully, her curiosity overtaking her nervousness as she studied the box, plain and unadorned compared to the wealth surrounding her. Alaric explained that he had prepared something for her, not as a display of affection expected on a wedding night, but as proof of his intentions moving forward. Alina lifted the lid slowly, her breath catching as she saw the contents inside. Instead of jewelry or ornate gifts, she found a stack of documents bearing her family's name, each one marked as settled and paid in full. Her father's debts, the ones that had driven her into this marriage, had vanished entirely, cleared without condition or demand. Beneath the documents lay another paper, this one granting Alina full ownership of a small estate near the coast, entirely in her name. Independent of Alaric's control. Alina stared at the papers, her hands trembling as she processed what she was seeing, unable to form words for several long moments. Alaric explained quietly that he never wished to trap her in a life she did not choose, and that regardless of what happened between them, she would always have security and freedom of her own. Alina's eyes filled with tears, though these felt different from the ones she had cried in the days leading up to the wedding. She looked up at him, searching his face for hidden motives, finding only quiet sincerity in his gray eyes. She asked why he would do something so generous for a stranger forced into marriage against her will. Alaric was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the fire before he answered, his voice carrying old sorrow beneath its calm surface. He told her that he understood loss and forced circumstance better than most, having lived through both in ways he rarely spoke about. He explained that he did not wish to add to anyone's suffering, especially not someone so young, and that he hoped in time she might find peace within these walls, even if she never found love. Alina set the documents down carefully, her mind racing with questions she wasn't yet ready to ask. She realized in that moment that everything she believed about her husband, every frightening rumor and cold assumption, had been built on fear rather than truth. The man standing before her was not the villain the village painted him to be, but someone carrying burdens of his own, hidden behind years of solitude and misunderstanding. For the first time since her father announced the engagement, Alina felt something other than despair settle into her chest, a fragile, cautious curiosity about the man she had married. She thanked him quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, unable to fully express the weight of gratitude and confusion swirling inside her. Alaric nodded once, then gestured toward the second chamber adjoining the room, telling her she was free to rest undisturbed for as long as she needed. As Alina lay awake that night, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling above her, she found herself thinking not of the life she had lost, but of the strange, unexpected kindness she had just witnessed. The weeks following the wedding passed slower than Alina expected, each day revealing new layers of the man she had married. She discovered that Alaric spent his mornings walking through the estate gardens alone, tending to roses with careful, practiced hands despite having servants who could easily do the task for him. Curious, she began joining him during these quiet walks, their conversations starting small before deepening into longer discussions about books, history, and the world beyond the estate walls. Alaric spoke rarely about his past, but Alina noticed the way his expression shifted whenever certain rooms in the mansion were mentioned, particularly one locked chamber on the estate's upper floor. One afternoon, while exploring the library, Alina found an old portrait tucked behind a shelf, depicting a young woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. When she asked a maid about the painting, the woman hesitated before explaining that it was Alaric's first wife, who had passed away many years ago along with their infant daughter during a difficult birth. Alina felt a pang of sorrow she hadn't expected, suddenly understanding the quiet sadness that lingered behind Alaric's calm exterior. She began to see him differently, no longer as the intimidating duke the village feared, but as a man who had spent decades carrying grief in silence, choosing solitude over the risk of losing someone again. Their bond grew slowly, built on small moments rather than grand gestures, shared meals, quiet laughter, and evenings spent reading by the fire. However, not everyone welcomed this growing closeness. Alaric's distant cousin, a sharp-tongued woman named Priscilla, arrived unannounced one afternoon, her eyes narrowing the moment she saw Alina seated beside the duke in the parlor. Priscilla had long expected to inherit Alaric's estate, given his previous lack of an heir, and made her displeasure known through pointed remarks disguised as polite conversation. She warned Alina privately that dukes rarely stayed devoted, hinting at scandal and betrayal in Alaric's past that Alina knew nothing about. Alina tried to dismiss the words as jealousy, but doubt crept into her mind despite her growing trust in her husband. That evening, she confronted Alaric gently, asking if there was truth behind Priscilla's insinuations. Alaric's expression darkened briefly before he explained that Priscilla had once attempted to manipulate his first wife using similar tactics, hoping to create distance within the marriage for her own gain. Alina realized the danger Priscilla posed was not new, but a pattern designed to isolate anyone who threatened her inheritance. Determined not to let fear control her decisions, Alina chose to remain close to Alaric, strengthening their trust rather than allowing suspicion to divide them. Priscilla, sensing her plan failing, grew more desperate, whispering rumors throughout nearby villages that painted Alina as a fortune seeker, manipulating an old man for wealth. The tension within the estate grew thick, with Alina caught between defending her reputation and protecting the fragile relationship she had built with Alaric. As days passed, Alina understood that proving her sincerity would require more than words alone, especially with Priscilla determined to unravel everything they had carefully built together. Priscilla's schemes reached their peak one evening when she arranged a private meeting with influential nobles, spreading claims that Alina had forced her way into the marriage through deception, hoping to seize Alaric's fortune before his health declined. Word of the accusation spread quickly, reaching Alina through a worried servant just as she prepared for dinner. Her hands trembled as she read the details, realizing the accusations threatened not only her reputation but Alaric's standing among his peers. Rather than hiding in fear, Alina decided to confront the situation directly, requesting an audience with the same nobles Priscilla had turned against her. Alaric, upon learning of her decision, insisted on standing beside her, refusing to let her face the accusations alone. Together, they entered the grand hall where Priscilla waited, confidence radiating from her sharp smile as she anticipated an easy victory. Alina spoke calmly, presenting the documents Alaric had given her on their wedding night, proof that she had never sought his fortune, since she already possessed independent security through the coastal estate gifted to her. The nobles murmured among themselves, surprised by the evidence contradicting Priscilla's claims entirely. Alaric then stepped forward, revealing details about Priscilla's history of manipulation, including her previous attempts to interfere in his first marriage years earlier. Priscilla's confidence faltered as the truth unraveled before the gathered nobles, her carefully constructed lies crumbling under the weight of evidence and testimony. Humiliated and exposed, she left the estate that night, her influence among the nobility permanently damaged by her own deceit. With the threat finally resolved, Alina felt a weight lift from her shoulders, though a new realization settled quietly in its place. Standing beside Alaric throughout the confrontation, she recognized that her feelings toward him had shifted far beyond gratitude or duty. She admired his steady strength, his quiet wisdom, and the gentle way he had protected her without hesitation. That night, as they walked together through the moonlit garden, Alina finally voiced the emotion she had kept hidden, admitting that what began as an arranged obligation had grown into genuine affection. Alaric paused beside the roses he tended so carefully, turning to face her with an expression she had never seen before, warm and unguarded. He confessed that he had feared allowing himself to feel anything again after the losses he endured, yet Alina's presence had slowly softened the walls he built around his heart. For the first time since their wedding night, Alaric reached for her hand, his touch gentle and certain, no longer bound by obligation but by choice. Alina smiled through tears that no longer carried sorrow, but quiet joy at the unexpected life unfolding before her. The marriage that once represented loss and fear had transformed into something neither of them anticipated, a partnership built on respect, understanding, and love discovered where none was expected to grow. As the stars stretched endlessly above the estate, Alina finally understood that some of life's greatest gifts arrive not through choice, but through the courage to embrace what unfolds before us.